Okay, welcome back to class. Hope you had a good vacation weekend. And so we're going to move on and we're going to just summarize what we've already done on blood. And then we're going to talk about blood types and blood transfusions in this video. So here we go. So summary of what we've done so far. Red blood cells, as you know, are called erythrocytes. They are the most abundant cells in our blood. Cells in our blood, not plasma, cells in our blood. And they are produced in the bone marrow, that is inside your bones, in particular the big bones. And they contain a protein called hemoglobin that carries oxygen around our body to all our cells. And it also transports waste products, mostly carbon dioxide, out of our cells, back to the lungs to be breathed out. White blood cells, as you know, leukocytes. They are part of the immune system, which we will look at later. The immune system is what fights infections. They destroy pathogens. Plasma is the yellowish liquid. It contains electrolytes, in other words, things like sodium, potassium, calcium, stuff like that. Nutrients that have been dissolved, vitamins, hormones we will talk about later, clotting factors we looked at a little bit in hemostasis, and proteins such as antibodies. These are the things that identify infection and fight it. And platelets, thrombocytes. The clotting stuff that we looked at in hemostasis that prevent you from bleeding and bleeding and bleeding and lead to a process called coagulation. So what makes up our blood? As we said, red blood cells, the most abundant, carries oxygen. White blood cells destroy infections. Plasma carries nutrients. Platelets prevent blood loss. Blood facts. The average adult has about 5 litres of blood, which makes up about 8% of our body weight. Blood is a living tissue that carries the oxygen and nutrients to all parts of the body and carries carbon dioxide and other waste products back to the lungs, to the kidneys, the liver, for disposal, to get rid of. It also fights infections and heals wounds. So it is integral. It is very, very important in both hemostasis and homeostasis. There are about 1 billion red blood cells in 2 to 3 drops of blood. For every 600 red blood cells, there are about 40 platelets and 1 white blood cell. So you can see there are many more red blood cells than there are anything else. Now, let's look at blood types. Starting at the very beginning, genetics. That means the makeup, how you got them, of blood types. And as we know, there are a few. So let's have a look. Your blood type is established before you're born by what are called genes. These genes you get from your mother and your father. They are unique to you, to your family. You inherit 1 gene from your mother and 1 from your father. These genes determine your blood type by causing proteins that exist on the surface of the cell, like sprinkles on a donut. You either have them or you don't have them, or you have certain types and you don't have certain other types, and we will look at this in more detail. So here are the blood types. There are 3 genes for blood types, A, B and O. Since we have 2 genes, can't have all 3, you can only have 2, right? One of each. So there are 6 possible combinations. And if you look at the little box at the top here, AA or AO, right? If both your parents are A's, or one is an A and one is an O, you're going to be a type A. If both parents are a B, or one is a B and one is an O, you're going to be a type B. If both parents are an O, you are going to be a type O. If one parent's an A, one parent's a B, you're going to be a type AB. And what does this mean? Well, here are the proteins, like the sprinkles on a donut. If you're an A, in other words, both parents are an A or an AO, you're going to have A sprinkles. If both parents are B's, or one's a B and one's an O, you're going to have B sprinkles. Type AB, if both parents are AB, you are going to have AB sprinkles. If your parents are O, you are going to be an O. In other words, you have no sprinkles on your donuts, on your red blood cells. And this is very important when we look at blood transfusions and things like that. So try to remember that. Depending upon what your parents are, is going to determine what you are going to be. Now these are the antigens that are on your red blood cells. None here. Antibodies. These are what are in your plasma. In other words, you have these sprinkles and you have these antibodies. So if your blood comes into contact with somebody else's blood who has B antigens, you are going to fight it. Okay? If you are an AB here, you have no antibodies at all. Right? So you can take anybody's blood, and we'll talk about this later. If you're an O, you have both A and B antibodies, which means you can receive nothing but O blood. And we'll look at that in a little bit when we come to transfusions. So how common is your blood type? And here is a chart just briefly showing you the distribution of different blood types in a population. And as you can see, O positive is by far the most common blood type. But what do we mean by O positive? We have O negative here, right, with a much lesser proportion. Well, we're going to look at that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But anyway, O as a group make up 46.1% of the population. A's make up 38%, or 39 roughly. B's 11%, and AB's only 4%. Now, blood transfusions. Blood transfusion means giving and receiving of blood from somebody else. It's usually done through an intravenous infusion or an IV, as it's commonly known, into one of your blood vessels. They are done to replace the blood you have lost during surgery, illness, or if you have a medical problem. That means you cannot make blood, or the blood you make is wrong. So who can give blood? Well, as we said, type O, they have no sprinkles. They have no antigens. Therefore, type O is called the universal donors. In other words, they can give blood to anybody because there are no antigens, so therefore the antibodies will not react against those antigens because there are none. People who are type AB are called universal recipients because they can receive blood from anybody. They have sprinkles and antibodies, sprinkles for everything. So they can receive any blood with any other sprinkles. Now it gets a little bit more complicated. RH positive, RH negative. Positive can only receive positive or negative. Negative can only receive negative. What does that mean? Let's have a look. RH factors or rhesus factors. This is from the rhesus monkey. We inherited some of these factors from these monkeys. These factors are proteins that are present in the blood of some people and not in the other. If you have the protein, you are called RH positive. If you don't have the protein, you are RH negative. So this determines blood groups, and we're going to look at the positive things. So here are your blood groups, A, B, AB, and O. Antigens, the sprinkles on your red blood cells, on your donuts. You have if you're A, you have the A antigen. If you're B, you have the B antigen. AB, you have both. O, you have neither antigen. Antibody. This fights, this is part of your immune system, will fight the other antigens. So, if you are A, you have the B antibody. If you're B, you have the A antibody. If you're AB, you don't have any antibodies. If you are O, you have both A and B antibody. So this will determine who you can give blood to. O can give blood to everyone. Universal donor. AB can get blood from everybody because they have no antibodies. Right? But how does the rhesus come into this? Well, it makes it more complicated, and it's very important. If you give the wrong blood to the wrong patient or the wrong person, you can cause a number of problems. One is called anaphylactic reaction, and we will talk about that more in the next video. Coagulopathy. Obviously you know that that has something to do with coagulation, clotting. Right? There is a problem with clotting. And the final problem is death. You can kill the patient by giving them the wrong blood. So to conclude, you can give O negative, that's rhesus negative, O rhesus negative blood to anyone. Anyone can take O negative blood. However, you cannot give positive Rh, rhesus positive blood to anyone who is rhesus negative. So you cannot give O positive to somebody who is a negative, because you will cause these problems, which you don't want to do. Okay, so we're going to stop there so that you can do your little test quiz as to what we've done so far, and then we're going to move on to look at disorders and diseases of the blood.